So we'll continue on with part 2 of the screencast for campaigning and elections. So during the screencast, if you'll continue your vocabulary list of words by writing down the terms that you'll see highlighted on your screen with a very short definition. And during this particular screencast, we're going to focus on financially supporting your candidates, getting them elected to office, and also advertising, and how advertising and propaganda will also get candidates elected to office. So a quick reminder from the vocabulary terms from part 1 of the screencast. Again, did you get all of these terms? These were again from just part 1 of the screencast. So make sure that you have all of these terms listed on your vocabulary and defined. If not, you can go back to part 1 of the screencast and get those before you continue on with part 2. So we've gotten through 3 steps of campaigning and elections in the first screencast. We've talked about how presidents are nominated through national conventions and other candidates are nominated through something called a caucus, and then we've talked about primary and general elections. So now we're going to talk about the actual candidates and how they start campaigning for office. Well, of course, they're going to need money in order to campaign. Now, I really do believe that in today's society that a politician can launch a successful campaign through the use of social media, which is free. But obviously that's not going to reach a wide audience as much as launching television ads, ads through radio, putting things in your mailbox, having signs to put in people's yards. The more people see a name, the more they tend to remember that, and those are the names that they will tend to actually cast their ballots for, whether that's good or bad. But let's take a look first of all at one of the first laws that actually restricted campaign finance, and that's in 1971. So I want you to think about why that would be necessary. Why would you need a law to restrict the money that you spend on campaigns and elections? Well, I hope that you can think about maybe the idea of corruption and how it might seem that a candidate or a potential politician might make it look like they're literally buying an office, because it seems to be, unfortunately, like the candidate with the most money, who can create the most advertisements, who can create in a citizen's memory the best advertisements, the most catchy phrases, the most negative campaigns against their opponent, tends to win the election. So the Federal Election Campaign Finance Act of 1971 actually set federal rules for donating money and also for using money for campaigns. Money for campaigns can come from 2 sources, and that's actually in the bolded and underlined areas on your screen, from public and from private sources. That's pretty simple, public and private. There's really your only 2 choices. There's one public funding area that we take a look at where a public means everybody has access to that. Anyone who pays income taxes can donate to a public fund called the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. When you get your tax refund check, you could actually check a box where you could donate a few dollars. It's like $3 to $5, something like that. It's not much. But you could donate a few dollars from your tax refund check to the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. And that money goes into a pool of money that's distributed out amongst all of the presidential candidates for office. And they can use that money, of course, to fund their campaign. Money can also come from private businesses or from just regular people. And honestly, most money in campaigns are going to come from private sources, not public. But the problem is that sometimes, if you're not careful, it might look like private people or even private businesses might make it seem like they have a politician in their pocket, so to speak, where they're literally buying off a politician. They're putting their friend in office, so to speak, and their friend is going to make sure that they do in office whatever that person who bought their position is going to want them to do, so to speak. And that's unfortunate and shouldn't happen that way. So the next key term is soft money. Soft money would be donations to candidates that aren't designated for a particular purpose. And in 2002, there was a law that banned unlimited donations to a candidate, again, to try to prevent corruption in terms of literally buying a political office. Money has to be used for general purposes. Like, for example, if you're donating money, it can't just be to a candidate. It has to be for general things to help people get out the vote. So it has to be for voter registration drives and ads about issues. It can't just be about you getting elected to office. So most soft money goes to TV ads to remind you when you need to register to vote, for example. So it has to go for an in general kind of fund. And there's also a limit about how much money you can donate to a campaign as well. Looking at a test case, this has been something that's been decided fairly recently. It's called the Citizens United case, or Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, and it was decided in 2010. So again, looking at federal laws that prohibit the donation of money, the Supreme Court kind of backed away from that a little bit, but only a little bit, because the Supreme Court looks at the constitutionality of donations and what people, and in this case, corporations, businesses, or organizations can do. So there was this conservative in this particular case, a conservative, and if you remember on our political spectrum, conservative means to the right. It means more of a Republican stance, so think about your social issues. They tend to be, for conservative, they tend to be against abortion, for the death penalty. They tend to be in more support of, say, gun ownership, and not in support of, say, Hillary Clinton. But there was a movie that this group, Citizens United, had produced called Hillary the Movie. And the movie had questioned if Hillary would make a good president. Well, it was produced by this nonprofit corporation or organization, where there was an act, a federal law called the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, that would really hinder this conservative nonprofit group from actually continuing on with the production and distribution of this movie. Well, the BCRA, the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, had prevented corporations and labor unions, as you'll see in the second bullet there, from funding any kind of political, what I call communication, and required a list of donors that supported communications be made public. So while a corporation or a labor union literally could not, they did not have free speech, so to speak. You would think that that might even make sense. Like, why, how could a corporation have free speech? Well, really, the Supreme Court kind of looked at it, well, corporations pay taxes, so they see it as almost like an entity. Like, corporations kind of have the possibility to do that. It's very strange, and we'll talk more about that in class when we get together, and I'll answer your questions, because this is a kind of a strange case. But the Citizens United case kind of struck down the BCRA and said that's not really constitutional. The Supreme Court said in a very close decision, because there's only 9 justices on the Supreme Court, but in a 5-4 decision, said that basically corporations and labor unions indeed can have some free speech to choose to support a candidate. So they can make advertisements, they can put up signs, and they can come out in support or against a candidate. Now, soft money is still illegal. They still can't make these unlimited donations. So corporations can't make like unlimited, a whole bunch of, millions and millions of dollars of donations to support a candidate or even to come out against a candidate. But they can make advertisements and documentaries to put out into the public because, in essence, it kind of falls under free speech. And so a lot of people question that. A lot of citizens still question that. And it's still fairly a new case, so there's still some debate and discourse about whether the Citizens United case and that decision is still a good thing for America. So I think that would be something good for us to discuss in class. If corporations should have the ability to have free speech in terms of an election, because really this could sway an election, because some corporations with a lot of money can put forth a lot of effort behind a campaign and really support a candidate and make the other candidate look really, really bad. And that actually gives rise to our next highlighted term called a PAC or a super PAC. A PAC is a political action committee. And again, the good thing about civics terms, it is exactly what it says it is. It is a political action committee. A PAC is basically something that is established by a corporation or a union or a special interest group, and it's to donate money to candidates who support the PACs on positions and issues. Now again, that 1971 law makes the PACs donate to a political party and not a candidate. So the PACs can, let's say, the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Wonder if they would donate to the Republican or Democrat Party. They would donate to the Republican Party, typically, because the Republicans tend to be more conservative. So the National Rifle Association, which would support gun ownership and less restrictive measures for gun ownership, would donate not to Donald Trump, the candidate, but donate to the Republican Party in general. But then the PACs, of course, can donate an unlimited amount of money. And that's, of course, where a lot of people find this a gray area, where if you're not careful, you could have, like, the Republicans then could donate or use that money that's been donated to support one candidate in particular, like Donald Trump, to get that candidate elected to office, which, of course, the Republicans would want to do as a political party. That's their main goal, is to get a candidate elected to office. And I'm going to click on that website right there, and I'll show you what it looks like. So just really quickly, just to kind of get an idea about what PACs or super PACs are, just kind of scroll through some of these groups, and there's a whole bunch of them. And they'll tell you like how much they donated and if they're liberal or conservative. Again, I'll scroll back up. You'll see where the AFL-CIO Workers' Voices, that's actually like a labor union, how much, money they've donated. And so you could take a second if you get a chance to kind of breeze through these, and I'm scrolling through, you'll see, yep, there's a whole bunch of them, where they've donated a lot of money to a particular campaign for a political party. And again, they can't donate necessarily to a particular person, but they can donate to a political party. Now, when we were looking at the word PAC, or Political Action Committee, we use the word interest group. An interest group is a little different. An interest group is an organization whose members share common concerns, and they try to influence government policies that impact those concerns. It seems like a political party, but it's very different. They focus on a particular interest for themselves, and again, it can be something like the NRA. They use propaganda techniques and lobbying, or lobbyists, to help make changes in public policy. A lobbyist is someone who will approach a lawmaker, someone in Congress, for example, in order to try to get that lawmaker, that congressman, to support their organization and therefore make laws and policies that will benefit their particular interest groups. So they are most influential at the congressional at the congressional level. And again, I'll show you the two websites there really quickly and what they look like. So just a quick peek at some special interest groups on Vote Smart. You can again take a second to kind of scroll through these and look at their ratings and their last endorsements and their names, and you can click on those. They're categorized by topics. So if you're looking at, say, animals and wildlife, you have like the American Humane Association, and looking at, them as a special interest group. Well, of course, they would want to protect animals. And so they would want to hire lobbyists or use lobbyists to go to Congress, for example, and connect with congressmen who are willing to support their cause and make policies and laws that will support the protection of animals. And the other website kind of lists some examples of public and private or other types of special interest groups, just to give you kind of an example of types of interest groups that you may see in terms of looking at abortion, environment, gun control, gay rights, the NAACP. There are a variety of different types of special interest groups. So to kind of bring this back and summarize, what's the difference between a PAC and a special interest group? A PAC is looking at political action in affecting the outcome of an election. An interest group is really focusing on, after an election, influencing the policies and really getting in contact with officials that have already been elected. So a PAC is influential during an election. An interest group connects with politicians already elected to office. So that's kind of how they operate. And what does a lobbyist do? A lobbyist is someone who is hired by a special interest group in order to connect with someone who typically is a congressman who can make changes in government to impact those special interest groups and what they want to have done in government. And just to end part 2 of the screencast, these are the terms that you should have in your vocabulary list from part 2.